Hi, Year 11s. We're starting our new topic now. We're going to be looking at ecosystems. This will be the last unit we look at as part of the Year 11 SACE course. We're going to start a little bit in the middle of the course because I think we're better off starting with classification. So let's start having a look at classification. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 videos in this PowerPoint. We're going to start with why, as scientists, we have to classify living things into different categories. So, to do that, we need to talk about the biological classification system. So, first off, a little bit of facts. There are around 2 million species that are known to science and scientists at the moment. According to estimates, there's around 6 to 8 million more species that we've never discovered because there's parts of the Earth we've never been able to be to. We've only explored very small portions of the Earth, and it's estimated that there are so many more species down there. So, for example, every time we dive deep into the ocean with research, etc., most of the time those studies come back with finding another 5 or 6 species of organisms that we've never found before. That's a lot of animals to keep track of. So there's a large level of biodiversity there, so difference in the forms of life. We have to use a classification system to sort those living things into a system of groups based on their shared characteristics. So, for example, external structures, method of reproduction, DNA sequences, lots of different reasons or why an animal was classified the way it is. Another important reason that we classify is that in terms of names of animals, so there are different names of animals. So, for example, we call us humans. The scientific name for humans is Homo sapiens. If I was to go to China or India or Russia, they're all going to have a different word for the word humans. They're not going to say humans, they're going to say something else. When it comes to science, they will say Homo sapiens. So we're creating this common language between everyone that we can use. So when we say Homo sapiens, scientists across the globe know what species we're talking about. So it's a global language used for classification purposes to make that communication between scientists easier. In order to understand how classification works, we need to understand that there are taxa. So these are like groups. The way I like to think of them is like search filters on the internet. So I want to search for a certain animal, and I do a broad search, and then I keep refining it until I get to the exact article I want or the exact species that I want. So first off, the main taxa that we have are kingdoms, phylums, class, order, family, genus, species. Now it's very important that you remember those. So what I would do if I was you, I would take the first letter, so K, P, C, O, F, G, S, and I would try and make a sentence of words beginning with those letters. I can't think of the top of my head. I know that I did at university. I used these and I would make a sentence out of those. So something like kind, people, can, order, family, I don't know, something like those lines. But then when I think of that sentence, I just write down the first letters and then I can come up with kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. It's a really good way to try and remember that, make a sentence that makes sense to you, and that'll help you remember the different taxa. How does the taxa actually work? Okay, so let's say I want to search for this jaguar panther down here. First off, I've thought, all right, I'm thinking of this animal, I need to do a search. So I type into Google, I type in animals, and I get every single animal that's in the world. I think, well, that's not helped me find the animal that I want. So we've got all these 5 kingdoms here. I need to specifically be searching in a specific one. So let's refine my search. Let's put a filter on it. I want all animals with a backbone. So I'm going to write animals chordata. Now all of a sudden, I've neglected these 4 blue boxes and I'm only looking at this box. So I've filtered it down to only looking at the animals inside this blue box. Again, unfortunately, that's a lot of different animals. Every animal with a backbone, that's a large group. So I need to put another filter in place into my search engine. This time I only want mammals. So I only want animals that have mammary glands and a backbone and fur or hair. So now I write animals with a backbone that have mammary glands. And I've neglected all of these little purple boxes now and focused just on this box. So I've refined my search yet again. Still though, way too large. I need to search a little bit further. Now I want all of those mammals that can eat meat, because I know that the animal I want to pick eats meat. So now I'm going to write animal with a backbone and mammary glands and fur that eats meat in my search engine. All of a sudden, I've lost the majority of these boxes and focused purely on the pink box here. Now, again, I've still got too much data. So I apply the search that I want all of those animals with cat-like features, and that narrows it down even further. Still too many. I want ones that specifically have features of panthers, so larger cats, silent, etc. And now I've reduced it to only 6 or 7 species of animals. But I need to pick my specific one, and I want to pick Panthera pardus. So you need to think of these as search filters, almost. And each time we go down a level, I'm reducing the number of species that I'm looking at until I get to the one species I was looking at. So, and then I can apply all that information to that species. So for example, my panther here, I know it shares common features with all animals that fit in the Panthera. It shares features with all animals that have cat-like features. It shares features with all animals that eat meat. It shares features with animals that are all mammals. It shares features with animals that are all got a backbone. But obviously, it's more closely related and more similarities with this group than it would with all the animals in this group up here. So, like I said, like search filter. Just very quickly, humans, you do need to be able to classify a human. So we're in kingdom Animalia, we're an animal. We have a backbone, so we're in the phylum Chordata. We are mammals, we have mammary glands and fur. So Mammalia, we are part of the primate order, so with monkeys and great apes, etc. Then we're part of the family Hominidae, because we have human features. Then we move into the genus Homo, because we have similar features to all humans, fossil and modern. And then we are specifically sapiens, which is the modern humans only. I'm going to draw your attention to this later on in another video for this PowerPoint, but I need you to notice that the word Homo and sapiens, and they're written very differently from the rest of the words up here. Homo, the genus, so the genus here, has a capital letter and is written in italics, and the species does not have a capital letter and is written in italics. And that's important, and we'll talk about that afterwards. So, what's the basis of classification? What am I going to classify animals based on? So 3 main features. We're going to classify animals based on their physical features, their reproductive strategies, or their molecular sequencing. So physical features are obviously going to be based on phenotype, so what they physically look like. And that makes sense. Obviously, I'm going to group organisms together based on what they look like. So all birds are going to have feathers and wings and lay eggs. And that's a physical feature. It makes sense to group them all together. I also want to group animals based on their reproductive strategies. So how are they reproducing? Different species will reproduce in different ways. So for example, tadpoles are going to lay eggs in the water and they'll be fertilized externally outside of the body in the water. Whereas something like something like a cat is going to reproduce internally. We can also reproduce with molecular sequencing by comparing DNA sequences of animals, and we can see how many differences there are between the genetic information in their DNA. Obviously, the more closely related an animal is based on the genetic information, the more likely they're going to be classified into the same group.